Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Mirka Wojnar, And on behalf of Kresy Family, I would like to welcome you all to our annual commemoration of the Soviet deportations to Siberia, an event we hold to tell our story, the story of our families, and so many in our nation. We commemorate these tragic events on or very close to the 10th of February, an anniversary of the first of the 4 waves of deportations, which took place in 1940 and 1941. I would like to welcome, representing the Polish Embassy in the UK, the Second Secretary and Vice Consul Tomasz Belcarowski. Thank you very much for being with us on this occasion. A very special welcome to the Siberian survivors joining us today, to their families and friends. We are also very pleased to see representatives of several Polish heritage and culture organizations and numerous supporters and members of Kresy Family. Welcome to you all. We are very happy that you were able to join us today. For many years, we met on this occasion at the Łowichanka restaurant at the Polish Social and Cultural Centre in Hammersmith in London. Warmth and energy of over 100 people meeting on this occasion obviously is different when we meet online. However, thanks to the technology, we are still together in these challenging times, and we are able to meet on this important anniversary and listen to the memories and thoughts shared by those impacted by the deportations. The one great aspect of meeting online is that we can have participants not only from across the UK and from many countries across Europe, but also from Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, and on the other side of the world from US, Canada, Argentina. We have, in fact, over 180 participants signed up to this event. And in some cases, as we could see, there are the whole families joining together. So welcome to you all, and thank you, and particular thank you to all those who made this effort despite very challenging differences in our time zones. A few technical things. The slides that you saw at the beginning of the event, as we were joining, obviously some of us were joining a little bit later than others. The slides will be repeated at the end of the event in case you wanted to stay for a couple of minutes and watch those images from Kresy before the war and during the war, and from Siberia again. We are all muted during the presentations to ensure the best audio quality possible. I was going to mention that there is a chat option available, but I can see from messages from all over the world that these times made us all so familiar with Zoom as a platform for meetings. So there is a chat there where you can send greetings and any words you would like to share. The event, the recording of the event will be available later at our website as well. There will be some memories today, some poetry, and some music. Our first speaker is Leokadia Majewicz, deported to Siberia when she was just 10 years old. Lodzia is the author of Slaves in Paradise, a book published first in 2004, published in English and in Polish, and is a tireless promoter of our history, speaking regularly to various audiences, particularly to schools, both in the UK and in Poland. A long-time friend and supporter of Kresy Family, Lodzia had been with us at various exhibitions and events. And we are very grateful to Lodzia for agreeing to share some memories of her time in Siberia, her very long road to freedom, and her life in UK afterwards. Lodzia.
Greetings, everybody. We were living in southeast of Poland, in the Podoli region, on the edge of a village called Jabłonów, 24 kilometers from Russian border. My parents had 5 children, 1 son and 4 daughters. I was the middle child. After the 1st of September 1939, I was a happy child. 17 days after the Germans invaded Poland, the Russian army crossed our border, telling us that they came to help us fight the Germans. They disarmed our soldiers, arrested the officers and teachers. Very often our house was searched by the Russian soldiers looking for arms. Then on 10th of February at 5:30 in the morning, we were woken up by very loud bangs on the door. When that opened the door, the Russian officer with a bunch of Ukrainians filled the room. The officer held a document. Stanisław i Władysława Kosińscy z rodziną, subierajcie z wieszczami. He gave us half an hour to gather our belongings. We were packed in 2 waiting sledges. We traveled to the Jewish post office in Suchostaw, where there were many Polish families waiting there too. An hour later, we were taken to the nearby cattle train, locked in the cattle wagon, and traveled to Husiaten, where we had to change to the Russian train. People started sobbing because this meant that we will be taken somewhere in Russia. The 1-month journey was a horrible one, freezing with not enough food and firewood. When everybody thought that we will die from starvation and cold, the train stopped and the door was opened, and by sledges people were taken to the nearby camps. Our first camp was only for 10 families. Sorry. The next day we were told that we are in Altajski Kraj, Topczychiński rejon, Bolszeja Reczka, number 24 Barak camp. We were told that we are being sentenced for 10 years of hard labor, but after 10 years we would be living here in the region, and this will be our home to the end of our lives. My first job was to cut wood for fire and clear the snow around the trunks so that the men could cut the trees down to the ground. I became very skilled with the small axe. Soon after we arrived in 24 barracks, we were told that we can write a letter a month to our relatives, and they can send us 1 letter and 1 food parcel a month too. The first parcel was delivered to our camp, but the next one my mother with sister or brother had to collect it from the Bolszeja Reczka town. Sometimes the commandant will not allow mom to a pass. Then the next month, when she would go with Jan to collect the second 2 parcels, she had to pay for the parcel that she didn't collect last month. Once he gave my mother a pass for 24 hours and only for mom. So she had to start the journey in the morning and came back walking in the darkness till 8 in the evening. And she had so many scratches when she came back. The commandant was very cruel one, in more other ways as well. 1 ruble from every person was deducted from our small pay for our transport to Siberia. During the spring, summer, and autumn, I was working in the forest collecting pine juice. Dad was cutting grooves in a pine tree, and I, with my older sister, fixed the steel cups under the grooves. And when the juice filled the cups, we emptied them to a bucket, and then from the bucket into the barrel. Then we corked the barrel, and we burned our names on the barrel to stop being stolen. We had collected enough clean juice to reach the norm every day, or we would not get paid for our work and given our daily ration of soup and a piece of bread. 200 grams. Every day we were exhausted by work and hunger. At the end of the summer, we moved to the barracks number 158, much bigger than the old one. During the freezing winter, I and my two younger sisters went to school. We were taught patriotic songs and Russian language. One day the teacher said to us that we are going to pray to Stalin because he can perform miracles. After we repeated the prayer, the trolley with the large pot full of soup and a few loaves of bread was brought in. We had a wonderful lunch and took some bread home. A few days later, we asked the teacher if we can pray to Stalin again. But teacher said, not now, because Stalin now is very busy delivering meals to other camps. So that was the end of Stalin's miracles. But no matter what, we never forgot to pray to God in the morning and before going to bed. So very often after midnight, the commandant, our cruel commandant, would knock on the door to check if no one had run away, because a bachelor managed to escape and send a postcard from Poland. That made him very angry. Our camp had over 500 very clever Polish people. They started 2 factories making glue and ski. The commandant was very happy because he made money by selling them. One day, after Stalin invaded Russia, the commandant gave us very happy news. We got our amnesty. He told us that a Polish general, Władysław Anders, is organizing a Polish army in Uzbekistan. The joy was mixed with fear and sadness. Every family except our left at least one grave behind. My father and Mr. Motyka went to town to organize a train. And soon after, we were all traveling towards Uzbekistan, escorted by NKVD. This time, we were not locked in. We could admire the passing land, but the journey was hell. The train stopped to allow people to cook a meal only 40 meters from the train. And before the meal was cooked, the train would start moving with no warning. People ran with the hot pans and tried to catch the moving train, burning themselves. Some fell under the train or were left behind. The next time the train stopped, Dad went to conductor, asking why he is doing this. And NKVD man said, if you don't like it, you can always go back to Siberia. After a few weeks traveling that way, our train left us in Kermene, and for a few days we were sleeping under the sky. The NKVD loaded us into barges. We wasted so many days traveling down the crazy Amudarya River to Nukus on the Aral Sea, where we had to work for a week cutting huge tall reeds before we could return back to Kermene and to the Voroshilov collective farm, where we lived in a room in one barn. For a few weeks, I worked collecting cotton buds, then clearing the field of cotton bushes, burning them and sprinkling the fields with ashes. Then there was no more work. So Mom asked me to go around the town and try to sell some crochet and embroidered clothes and buy some grain to make flour, to to make flatbread or soup. But very soon, the whole family became ill with typhoid, except me. God saved me, so I became their nurse, looking after them, begging around the collecting farm for milk and exchanging our embroidered items for some chicken or grain. Once I managed to catch a chicken and made a hearty soup for my suffering family. I did not call that stealing, because I just took what we have lost in Poland. I think that God was kind to us, because if I was ill with typhoid too, then I would have died. When Father got better, we walked to Kermene to see where the Polish army is being organized. And when he didn't come back, Mom knew that he enrolled in the army. Jan told Mom he would enroll in the cadets group, as he did not want to die of starvation. After that, Mom and I went to Kermene to see what she should do. Mom was so desperate and sobbing when she met a priest, who advised Mom to enroll herself in a women's army and put us girls into the orphanage, as the orphans and the cadets will be living in the first transport to Persia, today's Iran. Mom did that, and after 2 days, the orphans were traveling on a train to Krasnovodsk, happy to discover that brother was in the next compartment. On the Caspian shore, waiting for the ship, every day we were fed with a lot of fish soup. Stalin thought that by feeding us, he would fatten us skeletons. When the ship came, first unloaded tanks, cannons, and huge boxes, probably ammunition. And we were boarded. As my husband said, we were exchanged for arms. In the morning, we were in the Pahlavi port, Persia, a free country. On the shore, a long tent was waiting for us. We left our dirty clothes outside, had a glorious shower, and at the other end of the tent, underwear, khaki uniforms, and helmet was waiting for us. Oh, it was heaven. After a meal, we were told to sleep, but I just could not sleep. I walked along the shore and spotted my mother, who sat with the head down, hugging her knees. I recognized embroidery on her sleeve. We were so happy to see each other, as my mother thought she was missing, and she thought she would never see us again. The Poles were taken to Tehran, where we were able to celebrate our first Mass in freedom. Oh, it was glorious. An English-Persian couples came to orphanage and wanted to adopt us girls. When Mom heard this, she left the army and to look after us and teach the orphans girls how to sew and to alter their uniforms. After many weeks in Tehran, we all left our journey to Karachi. On the ship, I became very, very ill. I was unconscious with very, very high temperature, and in the Karachi spent many, many weeks in hospital. When I got better, we traveled by ship to Mombasa, Africa, and from there by train to Tengeru settlement near Arusha. Beautiful. 5,000 to 6,000 Poles lived in Tengeru. So schools were organized, and after 1 year catching up 2 years school, I chose Gimnazjum Krawieckie against my mother's wishes. I had passed the exams to go to Gimnazjum Ogólnokształcące, but stubbornly did not want to go there. In my school, we were learning every subject, all sewing skills, but no Latin, and that suited me. I was a very loyal student, never missed any lessons. During the summer holiday, my craft teacher, Mrs. Zofia Rarogiewicz, used to ask my mother if I could help her with making toy patterns, and that made Mom very happy and me too. I loved Tengeru settlement and being surrounded by jungle, eating mangoes and finger bananas, and watching the animals in the jungle. My favorite were the little noisy frogs. In 1945, the German capitulated, and it was the end of Second World War in Europe. But now our country was occupied by Soviets. That is why many of us could not go back for fear of being deported to Siberia, as all that happened to many pilots, Polish pilots, and soldiers who went back to Poland, accused of being English spies, imprisoned and tortured. Our eastern part of Poland was given to Russia, and Mom's family was relocated to Wrocław. Our fathers learned trade, and I told my mother, "Oh, you see, I chose the right school." It took another 3 years before we could join my father and my brother in England. So I managed to finish my education. March 1948, we boarded SS Orbita and sailed to England. I spent many days making a toy crocodile for my father. Some of the English civilians on the ship were very interested in my toy and wanted to buy it. So I was making many, and sold them for a very good price. And my father never got a present from me. As we sailed into Liverpool on the frosty 2nd of April, we saw so many wrecked ships sunken in near the harbor. And there were ruins of bombed buildings, evidence of war. It was the first time I had seen such a much horrible destruction. We met father and brother. Jan was now a grown man and surprised that we were all grown up too. After a time in Chickendon Army Camp near Reading, in September we traveled to Inverary, Scotland, where father had been given a job with the house by the Duke of Argyll. I became a waitress to about 26 engineers. My little sisters were at school. My older sister and my brother moved to Millom, Cumbria, Cumberland before. 2 years later, I went to Millom to be bridesmaid to my brother's wedding. On Sunday after the Mass, I met most wonderful young man whom my sister introduced to me, Henryk Majewicz. He was a watchmaker and jeweler, had a little shop. He came to my sister's house for lunch, and I was over the moon knowing him. The next time I saw Henryk was in July, when I visited my sister again. And we spent many days on walks and cycling. And after 10 days, we got engaged, and 5 weeks later, we got married. 15 months later, our son was born, and our daughter 4 years after. Henryk was a wonderful husband and father. He encouraged me to improve my English language and to study millinery at Lancaster College. After I passed the City and Guild of London exam with distinction, I became millinery teacher in adult education. I earned very good money and helped my Henryk buying more jewelry for shop. From 1962, I became a speaker talking about Siberia to all kinds of organizations in the area. As the shop expanded, I became his partner and taught only in the evenings. Up to 1991, we worked very hard, having only 4 holidays in over 40 years. Because living in the Lake District, beautiful surrounding, we had many wonderful days on the lakes, in the mountains, and the sea. It was the most beautiful place to live and bring up our children, and exciting place for our grandchildren to visit. My husband became a Rotary Club and I joined Inner Wheel. We organized many charity events. The biggest was a lottery I organized with the million business people donating prizes. We buy the first cancer scanner for Whitehaven Hospital. After we retired and Poland had its independence, we were visiting our country every year for 3 to 4 months each summer. We drove my Mark II Jaguar to every part of Poland. After I was speaker in many towns at the Rotary Club. Then in 2007, we moved to my husband's hometown, Bydgoszcz, for good. I joined the Siberian Club and was a speaker in many schools, colleges, and organizations, including the NATO school in Bydgoszcz, a very international audience. It was wonderful to meet and talk to so many different people there. In 2010, I was presented by Siberian Cross, and Rotary Brda in Bydgoszcz presented me with the Paul Harris Medal for the charity work. In 2011, thanks to Colonel Mirosław Łusiarczyk, I became matka chrzestna sztandaru 22 Ośrodka Dowodzenia i Naprowadzania, a patron of banner 22nd Control and Reporting, godmother to Air Force unit. 3 years ago, the Institute of National Memory, Instytucja Pamięci Narodowej, awarded me a medal. For being a witness to history, a speaker about World War II. Very unexpected honor. The award was thanks to my pilots who wrote my story to the Institute. For the last year, I had been grounded in my daughter's home, my daughter and my son-in-law home. And I spent many time keeping in touch with my beautiful family and friends via Facebook and making patterns, crocheting, embroidering, pictures, and cushions. Thank you very much for listening to me, and God bless you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lodia, for sharing so generously chosen fragments of your very, very rich history, the history of you and your family and your life in Poland, in Siberia, in UK, and in Poland again. And even for sharing your experiences of now, of lockdowns, with additional strands of creativity still flourishing now. Thank you so much. Now, Jadzia Słomka is a Polish-British mezzo-soprano and a music director of a dance company, Mazury. Her interest in folk-inspired music, as well as Polish patriotic songs and poetry, brings Jadzia to many projects promoting Polish history. She is also a granddaughter of a Siberian survivors. So I got a pleasure of mentioning actually that we not only have 3 generations, at least 3 we are aware of, attending our event today, but also representatives of 3 generations sharing and performing for us. Jadzia will be accompanied by Maryla Kolendo, a music teacher, also involved with Mazuri for many years. The first part of the program will be divided into 2 parts, and the first part will have 4 pieces in it, and many of you will probably recognize the titles. Marsz Sybiraków, Polskie kwiaty, Modlitwa obozowa i Jak długo w sercach naszych.
Z miast kresowych wschodnich osady wsi, z rezydencji białych dworków i chat, myśmy wciąż do niepodległej szli z uporem ponad 200 lat. Wydłużyli drogę carscy kaci, przez Syberię wiódł najkrótszy szlak i w kajdanach szli konfederaci, mogiłami zacząć polski trakt. Z insurrekcji kościuszkowskiej, z powstań 2, szkół, barykad, Warszawy i Łodzi, Konradowskiego oświecił Bóg i nam wmarszono Polski przewodził. Myśmy szli dziesiątkowani, przez tajgę spełny plątaninę dróg, a myśmy szli pokonani, aż cud nad Wisłą darował nam Bóg. A myśmy szli dziesiątkowani, przez tajgę spełny plątaninę dróg, a myśmy szli dziesiątkowani, aż cud nad Wisłą darował nam Bóg. Śpiewa ci obcy wiatr, zachwyca piękny świat, a serce tęskni. Bo gdzieś daleko stąd został rodzinny dom, tam jest najpiękniej. A właśnie teraz rozkwitły kwiaty, stokrotki, fiołki, kaczyńce i maki. Pod polskim niebem szczerym polem rosły najczyste kwiaty. I w urodzie jest Polska. Żeby tak jeszcze raz ujrzeć ojczysty las, pola i łąki, i do naczynnych rąk przynieść zielonych łąk rozkwitłe pąki. Mój najpiękniejsze są polskie kwiaty, stokrotki, fiołki, kaczyńce i maki. Pod polskim niebem szczerym polem rosły ojczyste kwiaty. I w urodzie jest Polska. Śpiewa ci obcy wiatr, tłoczy los ciągną, hej gdzieś po świecie. Zabierz ze sobą świat, zabierz z rodzinnych stron mały bukiecik. Bierz z tą piosenką bukiecik kwiatów, stokrotki, fiołki, kaczyńce i maki. Pod polskim niebem w szczerym polem rosły ojczyste kwiaty. W ich zapału urodzie jest Polska. gwiazdą będą stać, stać będzie kraj nasz sami, stać będzie gwiazda w chron, zwycięży orzeł biały, zwycięży polski lud, stać będzie kraj nasz sami, stać będzie gwiazda w chron, zwycięży orzeł biały, zwycięży polski lud.
Thank you, Jadzia. Our next speaker is Martin Stepek. Martin is a Polish-Scottish mindfulness teacher, poet, and author. He writes regularly on mindfulness, as well as on Polish history and the experiences of his father and his broader family in Siberia. His book of poetry, For There Is Hope, a bilingual book of poetry, explored his family history and the deep impact of Siberian experience. Martin will share with us a couple of selected poems today. After his poems, we will hear a second part of our musical program with Jadzia Słomka performing for us another 4 pieces: Pamiętam ciche jasne złote dnie, Wiatr od mojej wioski, Do ojczyzny, and Hej Sokoły. But for now, from Hamilton in Scotland, Martin.
Thank you very much, Mirka, and a huge hello to everyone. It's an absolute joy to be part of this, and hello to many of you who I know I haven't seen for many years. So Irena gave such a powerful, detailed story of her family's and her own life, so I'll miss out most of the story of my father's because it's similar. I think the salient points is that my grandfather managed to evade capture when he was tipped off that he was going to be executed as a potential resistance leader. Went into hiding, and while he was in hiding, the rest of the family were taken to Siberia. My grandfather died of cancer in the Underground Army in 1943. Excuse me, emotional with this, not knowing that his children had survived, and not knowing that his wife had died of starvation shortly after arriving in Persia. So she's buried in Tehran. So the absence of my grandparents in my life as I grew older has been a major emotional part of my existence in a healthy way. So these poems I have written over the last decade or two reflect that, and I think hopefully reflect how many of you feel. The first poem is not in the book, it's separate. I wrote it after, on the way down from the Highlands, actually, on a train, where I'd been doing a talk on what happened to my Polish family. And I just felt emotional, opened up the photographs and started to write this. I won't share the photographs, and I decided not to do Facebook, but I just wanted to put them up. So there's a letter from the Labour camp from my grandmother to her husband. The photograph, I talk about my father in his Polish Navy uniform, looking like a child. My grandfather as a young man, a sort of revolutionary, who fought with General Maciek in the First World War, after the First World War. And then him just before he died of cancer. My Aunt Danka in Parklevy, 3 stone 12, 25 kilograms, 15 years old. A year later, in Nazareth, floral, beautiful. And my Aunt Danka, my Aunt Zosha, looking like Greta Garbo, I thought. The poems, though, are about this lady, I'll just get this right, my grandmother, one of only 2 photographs we have of her. This first poem is called On the Train Home from Oban. On the train home from Oban, near Helensburgh, with the Gairloch gleaming beneath summer green trees in late pastel sunlight, I took out my photographs of Dad's family from Poland and Persia and war, and a letter from Janina that includes her desperate words, all of us are still alive. Dad, like a schoolboy in his Polish Navy uniform. My grandfather, the early photograph of the radical. Then over the page in his last balding cancer years, with a firmness of expression betraying fear of a war that would come and destroy their lives. Danka, staring like a zombie on Pachlevi Beach, eyes devoid of life, just 15, in an oversized man's army shirt. Then only a year later, her smile gleaming, dressed in Polish national costume and floral hair braid in Nazareth. Looking like Garbo in Polish uniform, complete with tie and jacket. Glamorous. She who had cradled a little girl in Uzbekistan, the girl dying within minutes. Zosha's tears dropping on the girl's soft, peaceful face. And Janina. God help me, her eyes melancholy, prescient, as if she knew one day I'd sit on this train with her image in front of me, bereft of my grandmother, she knowing she would never know me. And yet through this time warp, we meet halfway. Not quite able to touch, to talk, to say so much that needed to be said about her, about Dad and Zosha and Danka and Władysław. Not quite able to make that miraculous connection that would heal everything. But we almost get there, almost bridge the killing years, almost express an exquisite love and sorrow, but knowing we have to part without that communion. Till next time, till love again seeks to connect what's not possible to connect, and remains instead a hope in the heart. And this series of photographs set on a page on my side of the chasm between life and death. Thank you. This second poem is from my book, For There Is Hope. And again, it relates to my relationship with my grandmother, who I never knew. I remember writing this, I'd been interviewing my dad shortly before he died about his past, and I asked him when was the last time he saw his mother alive. And it was poignant. He had to leave to try and find the Polish army at Germany, and he had to leave his mum and his 2 younger sisters, and all of them were near starvation. And my grandmother said to him, "Go, whatever happens to us happens. You have to do your duty." Gone. So I came home, and the words "Janina, I love you" were in my head. I said to my wife and my kids, "I need some time," and you kind of know that's me. It means I need to write something down, something needs to get off my chest. Janina, I love you, or rather, the thought of you. I cradle your dying body in my arms, letting you know your family still love you. Janina, stars still sparkle. Your worn-out eyes shine brightly in the reflection. I wash your broken body with a grandson's tears, healing you with the emptiness of you in my life. Janina, your children are dead now, and you're so young. I prepare your still warm body, anoint it with oil and perfume. Janina, the Polish blood spilled was fertile, and freedom its passionate fruit. So I relieve your fretful ghost form, soothe the ache, stroke your ethereal face. Janina, it's time to rest now, time for us all to heal at last. I dress your pale, cold body in a white silk shroud and bury you anew in Hatchov to lie with Władysław. Janina, look at the gravestone in my heart, at words carved by your grandchild. Janina Chupka Stepek, 1902 to 1942. Mother of my father, mother of my aunts, wife of Władysław, victim of war. We love you, who never knew you. Thank you.
Pamiętam ciche, jasne, złote dnie, co mi się dzisiaj cudnym zdają snem. To był otwarty raj także i mnie, byłabym otwartym dzieciństwie mym. I czasem myślę, że ja tylko spłam, że całe życie moje było snem. Zbudzę się rajtem Tam gdzieś znad czarnej wody siada na koń kozak młody, czule żegna się z dziewczyną i jeszcze czule z Ukrainą. Hej, 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 sokoły, ojejcie, moje synowi, dzwoń, 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 dzwoneczku, oj, stepowy, skowroneczku. Hej, 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 sokoły, ojejcie, moje synowi, dzwoń, 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 dzwoneczku, oj, stepowy, dzwoń, dzwoń, dzwoń. Żal, 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 dziewczyno, za zieloną Ukrainą. Żal, żal, serce płacze, już cię nigdy nie zobaczę. Hej, 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 sokoły, ojejcie, moje synowi, dzwoń, 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 dzwoneczku, oj, stepowy, skowroneczku. Hej, 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 sokoły, ojejcie, moje synowi, dzwoń, 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 dzwoneczku, oj, stepowy, dzwoń, dzwoń, dzwoń. Ona jedna tam została, przepióreczka moja mała, a ja tutaj w obcej stronie dzień i nocą tęsknię do niej. Hej, 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 sokoły, ojejcie, moje synowi, dzwoń, 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 dzwoneczku, oj, stepowy, skowroneczku. Hej, 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 sokoły, ojejcie, moje synowi, dzwoń, 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 dzwoneczku, oj, stepowy, dzwoń, dzwoń, dzwoń. Wiele dziewcząt jest na świecie, lecz najwięcej w Ukrainie. Tam me serce pozostało przy kochanej mej dziewczynie. Hej, 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 sokoły, ojejcie, moje synowi, dzwoń, 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 dzwoneczku, oj, stepowy, skowroneczku. Hej, 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 sokoły, ojejcie, moje synowi, dzwoń, 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 dzwoneczku, oj, stepowy, dzwoń, dzwoń, dzwoń.
Very much, Jadzia. Thank you again. I'd like to thank all our speakers and performers, Leokadia Majewicz, Martin Stepek, Jadzia Słomka, and Maryla Kolendo for sharing with us today. I'd like to thank all participants for not only joining us, but also sharing so generously through the chat your impressions and your thanks. And as some of you mentioned, your families went through similar experiences and in some cases never spoke of those experiences. We are very familiar with that pattern as well. And in fact, we help a lot of families to start their research into their individual stories and to track and trace their families' histories. So if you would like to pose some questions or ask for some help with that, you're more than welcome. Please visit our Kresy Family website. Please visit our Facebook. Join us as members if you would like. I would like to thank very much our Kresy Family team for making this event today possible, particularly to John Binks, Irena Bojanowska, Elżunia Gradusielska-Olsen, Nikola Paździerska, Tadek Wojewódka, and Janusz Zajączkowski, our Zoom master on this occasion. Thank you very much for putting it all together. I hope that we can meet. I hope to see you all on our next commemoration, hopefully face to face. or maybe much earlier at some other events. And with this hope and with great thanks, I raise this glass to you all. Thank you. Stay well and see you soon.